You are 9 months pregnant. No hospital, no painkillers, no doctors. Just you, your people, and the most dangerous moment of your life. What happened next is why half of human history is missing. Because for thousands of years, women have been doing something that seems impossible. Giving birth without any of the tools we consider essential today. No sterile rooms, no medical intervention, no epidurals. And yet somehow the human race survived. The question is not just how they did it. The question is, who helped them do it? Because here is what the record reveals. Women never did this alone, not once in the entire history of our kind. Birth was a community event, and the systems they built around it were more sophisticated than you would think. The moment a woman in a traditional community realized she was pregnant, something shifted in the entire group's behavior. Researchers studying modern traditional societies have documented exactly what that shift looked like. The pregnant woman did not become isolated or sidelined. She became the center of an intricate support network. Other women in the group, especially older women who had already given birth, immediately began adjusting their roles. They took over more of her physical labor, brought her extra food, and started sharing knowledge that had been passed down for generations. This was not charity, this was survival strategy, because human birth is uniquely dangerous compared to other creatures. Our babies have massive heads relative to the birth canal, a consequence of walking upright and carrying large brains. The risk for both mother and child was staggering, so communities developed something remarkable to combat this. A specialized role that predates agriculture, predates civilization, predates almost everything we consider modern, the role of the midwife. And we have proof this role is ancient. Archaeological sites across multiple continents show evidence of tools, plant remains, and spatial arrangements consistent with organized birth assistance going back thousands of years. These were not just helpful bystanders, these were specialists. Women who had seen dozens of births, who knew techniques for turning breech babies, who understood which plants reduced bleeding and which positions made delivery easier. They were the first medical professionals in human history. But here is what most people never hear about. The midwife's knowledge did not stop at delivery. It began months before the baby arrived and extended months after. And the part that has been almost entirely lost to modern medicine is what happened during pregnancy itself. Ancient midwives were nutritional specialists. They did not use the word, but the practice was precise. In 2012, anthropologist Daniel Lieberman at Harvard published research on the diets of traditional peoples and found that pregnant women in foraging communities received targeted food allocations that differed from the rest of the group. They were given more animal fat, more organ meat, more bone marrow. These are the richest natural sources of fat-soluble vitamins, iron, and the long-chain fatty acids that are critical for fetal brain development. This was not random generosity, it was a system. Among the Weston Price documented traditional cultures of the early 20th century, nearly every group he studied had specific fertility and pregnancy foods. Coastal peoples gave pregnant women fish eggs. Inland peoples gave them organ meats. High-altitude peoples gave them specific dairy preparations. The details varied, but the pattern was universal. The community identified the most nutrient-dense foods available and directed them to the woman growing a child. Modern prenatal vitamins are an attempt to replicate in a pill what these communities accomplished through food. And the food worked better because nutrients from whole food sources are absorbed more efficiently than synthetic versions. Your ancestors did not know the chemistry, but they knew which women had the strongest babies, and they paid attention to what those women ate. When a woman went into labor, the group did not panic. They had been preparing for weeks. A specific location had already been chosen, usually away from the main camp, but close enough for safety. Somewhere with soft ground, access to water, and natural shelter. The laboring woman was never left with just one person. Typically, 3 to 5 women surrounded her, each with a specific role. One midwife managed the actual delivery, checking position and progress. Another supported the woman physically, letting her lean back or squat while holding her weight. A third prepared warm water, medicinal plants, and tools. Others kept a fire going and watched for danger, because labor could take hours or even days. The woman almost never lay on her back. That is a modern hospital invention. Instead, she squatted, kneeled, or stood, using gravity to help the baby descend. The midwife used her hands to feel the baby's position, guide the head, and prevent tearing. If something went wrong, if the baby was breech or the cord wrapped around its neck, these women had techniques. Studies of modern traditional communities show they knew how to reach inside and turn a baby, how to cut and tie umbilical cords with stone tools, how to apply pressure to stop hemorrhaging. These were not guesses. This was refined knowledge passed from generation to generation. And when the baby finally emerged, the next critical phase began. The infant was immediately placed on the mother's chest, skin to skin, exactly as hospitals recommend today. But the ancient practice went further. The placenta was delivered and carefully examined because experienced midwives knew a retained placenta could kill. The umbilical cord was not not cut immediately. They waited for it to stop pulsing, allowing all the blood to transfer to the baby. Modern medicine rediscovered this as delayed cord clamping in the 1,990 seconds. Ancient midwives knew it thousands of years before anyone wrote it down. Then came the recovery period, and this is where ancient practice diverges most sharply from what modern mothers experience. The new mother did not return to normal work for weeks, sometimes months. Other women in the group brought her food, helped her nurse, took care of her older children. This was not optional. This was embedded in the social contract. But here's the part that has been almost completely erased from modern conversation about postpartum life. Ancient communities did not just support the mother's body, they supported her mind. And they did it through a structure so deliberate that it functioned as an early form of mental health care. In 2017, a cross-cultural review published in the journal Transcultural Psychiatry examined postpartum practices across 46 traditional cultures worldwide. The researchers found a near universal pattern. In almost every culture studied, the first 30 to 40 days after birth were treated as a protected period. The mother was not left alone. She was not expected to make decisions. She was not expected to care for the baby without help. She was fed specific foods, kept warm, visited constantly, and physically tended to by older women who had been through the same experience. The researchers called this the lying in period, and they found that in cultures where this practice was maintained, rates of what we now call postpartum depression were dramatically lower than in industrialized nations. Not slightly lower, dramatically lower. Some communities showed rates close to zero. The structure itself was the treatment, constant company, shared responsibility, physical touch, reassurance from women who understood the experience firsthand. The mother was never given the message that she should be able to handle this alone. She was given the opposite message. You are not supposed to do this alone. We are here. We have always been here. Today, in most developed countries, a woman gives birth in a hospital, stays for 1 to 3 days, and goes home to a quiet house. Her partner may take a few days off work. Her own mother may live hundreds of miles away. Within a week, she is expected to function. Within 6 weeks, she is expected to return to work. The average new mother in the United States reports feeling isolated, overwhelmed, and unsupported within the first 2 weeks. Postpartum depression affects roughly 1 in 7 women, and the medical system treats it primarily as a chemical problem, something to solve with medication. Ancient communities treated it as a structural problem. A woman alone with a newborn is a woman in danger, not because she is weak, because the task was never designed for one person. The solution was not a pill. The solution was people. And here is the part that answers why half of human history is missing. Women's knowledge systems, including midwifery, nutrition, and postpartum care, were oral traditions. They were not written down until civilizations developed writing, and even then they were rarely recorded because they were considered women's domain. The vast majority of human birth knowledge existed in the minds of midwives, passed through demonstration and apprenticeship. When colonization and industrialization disrupted traditional cultures, much of that knowledge disappeared within a generation or two. Thousands of years of refined expertise gone, but fragments remain. In 2019, anthropologists working with the Aka people in Central Africa documented birth practices that likely stretch back to our earliest ancestors. The Aka midwives still use techniques, positioning, plant medicines, and support structures that mirror archaeological evidence from sites thousands of years old. They represent a chain of knowledge spanning the entire depth of human experience. So when you are 9 months pregnant in a modern hospital surrounded by monitors and medical staff, remember this. Your body was made for a process that worked for thousands of years without any of that technology. Your ancestors survived the most dangerous moment of their lives not because they were tougher or different, but because they were never alone. They built communities that caught them when they were most vulnerable, and those communities created the first specialized knowledge systems in human history. The missing half is not gone. It is in every culture that still honors the role of midwives, in every woman who supports another through labor, in every tradition that treats birth as a communal responsibility rather than a medical procedure.